Picture this. It's late at night. The rest of the house is completely quiet.
Just you and the glow of the monitor.
Right, exactly. You've got your headphones on. You are staring intensely at your computer screen. You're waiting on a massive video rendering file to finish, or maybe you're streaming a heavily demanding 4K movie.
Yeah.
And suddenly, bam!
The dreaded crash.
Yes, the system crashes.
Yeah.
But instead of just going to black or, giving you a standard error message, the screen completely shatters into this wild, unpredictable mosaic of colors.
Mm-hmm.
The pixels scatter. They stretch and melt into each other. The audio stutters into this strange, rhythmic, robotic buzzing. Now, normally your very first instinct is sheer frustration.
Oh, yeah. You probably want to throw your monitor straight out the window.
Right. But have you ever found yourself pausing, looking at that broken moment, that chaotic scattering of data, and thinking that it's actually incredibly beautiful?
It is a very specific, almost hypnotic kind of beauty. It completely stops you in your tracks because it is so radically unexpected. You are looking at a machine that is engineered, marketed, and fully expected to be absolutely flawless, suddenly doing something entirely out of its own control.
And that exact feeling, that specific beauty, is the grounding material for our deep dive today. We are pulling from a fascinating 2025 cultural column published by Monumental Movement Records, or MMR.
Such a great piece.
It really is. The piece is titled Glitch, When Noise Turns into Beauty. And our mission here today is to explore how the digital error evolved.
Right. From something we hated to something we love.
Exactly. We are going to trace its journey from being a frustrating bug that we simply tried to fix or delete into what has essentially become the defining aesthetic language of the 21st century. We will trace this evolution through music, visual arts, society, and pop culture.
And just to set the stakes for you as we get into this, in our increasingly perfect, optimized digital world, looking at glitches isn't just about art.
Right, it goes deeper.
It does. It's really about finding the human element inside the machine. When we see a highly advanced system fail, we are abruptly reminded that beneath the slick, frictionless interfaces we tap and swipe every single day, there's a fragile, incredibly complex, and vulnerable architecture.
Which is strangely comforting.
It is. That momentary vulnerability actually makes the technology feel much closer to us.
Okay, let's unpack this by taking a trip back to the 1990s. This is really where the sound of broken data started to become an intentional choice. The MMR column points us to a German music project called Audible.
Right.
Now, think back to the early 90s. The compact disc was sold to the public as the absolute pinnacle of perfect, indestructible digital audio.
Flawless sound forever.
Exactly. But Audible did the exact opposite of treating their CDs carefully. They intentionally took markers and physical blades and completely scratched the shiny surfaces of their CDs. Then they recorded the exact moments the CD player failed to read the data.
Which was a brilliant subversion of the consumer technology at the time. What Audible captured with those irregular clicking sounds and sudden dropouts wasn't just harsh grating noise.
No, it wasn't.
The process created a sound that was surprisingly organic, layered, and warm. It shifted the entire paradigm of how we view digital failure. A failing machine wasn't a mistake to be discarded. It was the birth of a completely new musical order.
It's so wild to think about.
It was the sound of the technology trying its hardest to cope, attempting to bridge the impossible gaps in its own reading of the data.
Wait, though, scratching a CD on purpose just sounds like ruining perfectly good hardware.
Mm.
I remember having a portable Discman on the bus in the late 90s, and hitting a pothole causing a skip was the most infuriating sound on earth.
How did they convince people this was actually music?
Because they arranged that failure with immense precision. They took that sheer frustration you felt on the bus and looped it, gave it rhythm, and turned the error into a textured instrument.
Wow.
They proved that the accidental fluctuations of a digital device could be translated into a deeply poetic language. And that paved the way for a massive evolution. The column lays out this timeline, pointing to Ryoji Ikeda in 1995 and 1996, releasing his masterpiece album Plus Minus, which took those concepts even further into stark minimalist noise.
Yes.
Then fast forward to 2004, you get this incredible collaboration between Alva Noto and Ryoichi Sakamoto with their album Brawn. The article explains how, around this time, developers were creating programming environments like MaxMSP and SuperCollider.
Those changed everything.
For those who haven't played around with them, things like SuperCollider are basically coding languages built specifically for audio. Instead of strumming a guitar, artists could literally type out math and algorithms to manipulate sine waves and intentionally harness random digital bugs.
And the significance of that shift cannot be overstated. With tools like Super Collider, artists were no longer just waiting for a happy accident or physically defacing a plastic disc.
Right, they were in control of the chaos.
Exactly. They were explicitly inviting randomness into their digital composition process. They were building architectural structures in the software that allowed the code to misbehave in controlled ways.
Which is such a paradox.
It really is. This culminated in the clicks and cuts movement of the early 2000s, where the error was no longer a byproduct of making music. It was the foundation of the music itself.
We see this absolute revolution happening in audio, but it didn't stay confined to headphones. It bled right into the visual world.
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine taking that same concept of intentional destruction and applying it to a video file. That gives us a technique called data moshing.
Such a great visual aesthetic.
If you have ever watched a video where one scene seems to literally melt into the next, where a person waves their hand and suddenly the colors of the background smear across their face like wet paint, that is data moshing.
Right.
The lost pixels melt together, blurring the lines between reality and a digital fever dream.
Data moshing is visually arresting because it actively plays with our brain's expectation of physical continuity. To understand why it looks like that, you have to look at how video compression works.
Right, it's all about file size.
Exactly. To save file space, a video doesn't save every single full image frame by frame. It saves a few full images called iframes, and then for the frames in between, it only saves the pixels that actually move.
Okay.
So when data motion artists intentionally delete those full resetting images, the movement data of a brand new scene gets applied to the visual pixels of the old scene. You are literally watching the digital tissue of the video tearing and stretching before your eyes.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The MMR piece introduces us to a media artist named Rosa Menkman and her 2010 book, The Glitch Momentum. She frames this melting down of screens in a way that completely changes how you look at your devices.
Yes, Menkman states, glitch is an aesthetic that exposes the invisible structures of media.
That's a powerful quote.
It raises an important question. How often do we actually think about the complex delivery systems bringing us our media?
Almost never.
Right. We are so used to pristine retina displays and flawless 4K streams that we take the delivery mechanism entirely for granted. When a file corrupts or a stream data moshes, the technology is essentially revealing its hidden skeleton.
It's showing its true colors.
Exactly. It is a moment of profound system self-disclosure. The machine is suddenly speaking up, showing you that it is a highly complex, fragile construct.
It's pulling back the curtain on the illusion of perfection.
Yeah.
And that concept leaps straight out of avant-garde media studies and into mainstream culture. By the late 2010s, glitch aesthetics were everywhere in street culture.
Yeah, it was unavoidable.
You had major clothing lines printing corrupted, staggered pixel patterns on expensive t-shirts. Global brands were using stuttering broken fonts in their television commercials. Society seemed to collectively decide to stop stressing about the sterile, impossibly clean aesthetic of early tech utopianism.
Embracing that noise meant signaling a comfort with imperfection. By wearing a shirt with a corrupted logo, people were acknowledging that the digital realm, which we were promised would be eternal and perfect, is actually just as prone to erosion, decay, and failure as the physical world.
Which brings up something I want you to think about as you are listening to this. Why are you drawn to these broken things? Think about your own camera roll. Why does a perfectly crisp, high-definition sunset photo sometimes feel less captivating or less authentic than a Polaroid with a weird chemical tear across it, or a digital photo with strange, corrupted color banding?
The MMR column brings in the philosopher Heidegger to offer a framework for that exact feeling. He argued that the essence of technology is the disclosure of being.
That sounds dense.
It is a bit, but if we apply that to the digital age, a glitch is the exact moment technology exposes its own limits. It creates a sudden rift in our perceived reality, and through that rift, an entirely different hidden order is revealed. We are drawn to it because it is a momentary collapse of control.
Let me try to translate that Heidegger concept for a second. It's like the old analogy of the broken hammer. If you are hammering a nail, you don't actually notice the hammer. You're just focused on the work.
Right.
You only notice the hammer when the handle suddenly snaps in half. In the same way, you don't notice the massive matrix of servers and internet cables running your life until your Netflix stream turns into a blocky, melted mess.
Precisely. The brokenness forces awareness. And what's fascinating here is the concept of generativity. You have to remember that algorithms, by definition, are rigid. They are strict mathematical rules written to produce a specific, highly controlled outcome.
No room for error?
None. But when unexpected randomness interrupts that perfectly controlled algorithm, it begins to mimic biological life. Biological life thrives on mutations, unpredictable variables, and sheer chaos.
Nature is messy.
Exactly. When a system glitches, it introduces that uncontrollable nature into the otherwise sterile digital environment. It feels organic to us because, just like nature, it refuses to be entirely tamed.
That really contextualizes why a pristine digital landscape feels dead and a glitchy one feels alive. And if we zoom out from art and philosophy, the MMR text points out that this same phenomenon is happening to society at large. We are experiencing what the column terms structural glitches.
These are everywhere now.
They really are. Think about social media algorithms. Suddenly, out of nowhere, you get these massive, unpredictable, viral explosions of information that the platform clearly didn't intend but accidentally amplified. Or look at artificial intelligence.
The hallucinations.
Yes, we have these highly advanced AI hallucinations where a language model might constantly generate a detailed historical biography of a war that never actually happened, complete with fictional dates and heroes. The article even frames NFTs as a societal glitch.
The framing of NFTs as noise is a sharp observation. The digital world was built on the premise of infinite, perfect replication. A file can be copied 1,000,000 times with zero degradation.
Sure.
NFTs fundamentally disrupt that by injecting artificial scarcity, which is a structural limitation, into a space that doesn't naturally require it. It is intentional noise introduced into the market economy of the web.
When you look at all these societal bugs, the hallucinations, the viral algorithm breaks, it feels like the systems are buckling under their own weight.
They are, and sociologically, that buckling is necessary. An overly optimized society feels incredibly suffocating to live in.
Absolutely.
When every aspect of our daily routine is tracked, predicted, targeted, and smoothed out by algorithms aiming for maximum efficiency, we lose a fundamental sense of autonomy.
We become part of the machine.
Exactly. These structural glitches offer us a subconscious sense of freedom. They prove that the overarching system is not omnipotent. It can still be surprised, which means human behavior can still be surprising.
Different cultures process this need for structural freedom differently, and the column specifically highlights how Japan has embraced this culture of noise. They have deeply woven the concept of the glitch into the fabric of their contemporary art and pop culture.
They really lead the way here.
In the Japanese club scene, you have artists like Seiho, who released the album NMP in 2022, and Tetsuro Kojima. They are known for taking raw, aggressive digital noise and integrating it directly into highly structured pop music frameworks.
It's a brilliant contrast.
And then there are media artists like Daido Manabe and Avala who take this concept entirely into physical spaces. They engineer immersive acoustic installations that function as visualized glitches. You literally walk into a room and feel like you are standing inside a physical error.
The Japanese context is incredibly rich because it bridges the gap between high-concept avant-garde art and mainstream consumer pop culture. You can see this most profoundly in their animation. Anime frequently uses the visual glitch as a serious metaphorical device.
Oh, for sure.
Consider series like Denu Coil, the recent iterations of Ghost in the Shell, or the film Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0.
Right, like in Ghost in the Shell SAC 2045, when a cyborg character gets hacked, you don't just see a progress bar. Their actual visual field tears apart with digital artifacts and static.
Exactly. In those works, visual bug effects aren't just thrown in because they look visually striking. They are used as a narrative device to symbolize what is called cognitive fluctuation.
Cognitive fluctuation.
It represents the psychological fracturing that characters, and by extension, the audience experience in today's information-overloaded society. When a cyborg's vision data moshes, it mirrors the profound disorientation we feel when we are overwhelmed by the relentless pace of digital modern life.
It's a visual representation of a mental breakdown. And speaking of the physical body breaking down into digital space, the article gives a nod to the artist Arca, specifically her 2013 release, ampersand, 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 ampersand.
Also known as just 5 ampersands.
Right. That project is a masterclass in fusing digital bugs with raw, visceral physicality. When you listen to it, it truly sounds like human meat and digital machinery are melting into one another.
It is deeply unsettling, but undeniably human.
Which brings us to the present and looking toward the future. The MMR piece looks at 2025 and beyond, defining our current state as the post-glitch era.
This is a wild paradigm shift.
It really is. The author argues that breaking the machine just isn't special anymore. And the reason why is that artificial intelligence is now capable of generating simulated bugs. The errors aren't accidents of hardware or software struggling to cope. They are completely intentional.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it fundamentally changes our relationship with this aesthetic. We now live in an era where errors are perfectly designed by AI. They are generated as fictional noise.
Fake glitches.
Exactly. If you are using an AI video generator, you can simply prompt it to make this look like a corrupted VHS tape or add data moshing effects to this transition. The neural network will calculate the perfect, most mathematically pleasing version of a mistake and apply it instantly.
That's so strange to think about.
The glitch has transitioned from a radical act of technological rebellion into a standard, easily selectable filter on an app.
So what does this all mean for you? If the machine is now faking its own brokenness just because we like the way it looks, where does that leave our connection to the technology?
Well, the author of the column argues that we will likely grow even more attached to this bug-filled, glitchy aesthetic because fundamentally, a glitch is a mirror of humanity.
We see ourselves in it.
We do. We are entirely impossible to perfect. We carry deep contradictions, we make highly irrational decisions, our bodies break down, and we are full of emotional noise.
Yeah.
And yet, we keep moving forward. We keep functioning despite our inherent flaws. Humans are, in the grand scheme of the universe, the ultimate glitch.
The ultimate glitch. We spent the last few decades trying to make our machines as pristine and perfect as possible, only to realize that the perfection was deeply alienating, and the flaws were what actually made them relatable. Let's recap this journey.
It's been quite a ride.
We started in the 90s with Oval literally taking a physical blade to a CD, discovering the warm music hiding in the failure of the laser. We saw that audio error bleed into the visual realm with melting pixels, exposing the invisible skeleton of the media we consume daily.
Revealing the system.
We zoomed out to see how structural glitches manifest in society through unpredictable algorithms and AI hallucinations, providing a strange sense of freedom. Through it all, the glitch has stood as a brave record of not being afraid to break.
It is a testament to the beauty of imperfection. But as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own.
Go for it.
We've established that humans are the ultimate glitch, and we've discussed how AI is now perfectly simulating these errors as aesthetic choices. But think about the long-term historical implications of this.
Okay.
As the creation of flawless, simulated digital decay becomes entirely normalized, how will this impact our trust in digital archives? When future historians look back at the data of the 2020s, how will they possibly be able to distinguish between a genuine technological failure that impacted society and a machine's calculated artistic performance of a mistake?
Will they even know what a real error looks like? That is a fascinating thought to leave off on. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the beautiful broken digital world. The next time your screen freezes or your audio stutters into static, maybe take a second before you curse at the machine and hit refresh. Look at the colors, listen to the rhythm, and embrace the noise in your own life. We'll catch you next time.